All right, we still have more to talk about. We're going to look at the defensive play of various Boston College players and what was up with that passing game. We'll get into all of that on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider and the host of this great podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Well, this is a special midday episode, and I am here today with Eagle Insider writer and guest of the show twice a week, Mitch Wolf. Mitch, how's it going?
It's going well. It's good that we decided to push this one off because I'm still not sure I would have had a voice yesterday after all the yelling I was doing on Saturday night at the game.
So Mitch got to get himself soaked in hours of rain, but was it worth it, Mitch?
So actually, I got very lucky. So our seats were basically at the top of Section K, which is the Young Alumni section kind of next to the band. So we were like under the eaves of the second level. So we weren't getting rained on during the game, which was fantastic. So we got very lucky there. But we were obviously getting rained on during the tailgating. So it was, pouring rain. And we'll talk about how that affected the game. But, definitely one of the more fun experiences I've had at a BC football game. Obviously, the back and forth nature of the game, BC winning at the end was a huge role. But just great to see so many people there, see the stadium packed, see a ton of Michigan State fans. And I got to give them a lot of credit. A lot of them traveled to the game. A lot of them were in the Brighton parking lots tailgating. And, they suffered through the weather too. And then they had to go home wet with a loss, which, I can't imagine how bad that must feel.
Right. Now let's talk about this game. First thing I wanted to talk about, I've already had a couple episodes where I've discussed this game. You can go back in the archives and find that. But I want to get Mitch's take, because Mitch, obviously, he knows the game in and out, and he's great with the film analysis. The passing attack. What did you see? What were some of your takeaways from Tommy Castellanos and the play calling from Will Lawing?
So the thing that colors this and a lot of aspects of this game is that the rain was a huge factor, and especially in the first half. And I think BC went into the first half thinking, okay, we're probably not going to be able to throw the ball. Let's just run the ball. We'll have some RPOs in there. We'll try, one or two downfield passes, and we'll see how it goes. They had 20 designed runs and 9 dropbacks, and I think some of those dropbacks were on RPOs. So, those don't even count as true dropbacks. I think that the concerns about Will Lawing's inability to scheme receivers open and the receivers' perceived inability to get open are somewhat overblown. There were plays to be had where receivers were open in the first half and the second half, and there were times when either Tommy didn't hit them, the receiver dropped the pass, the offensive line kind of busted. I would say the one thing that Michigan State really did well on defense was they took away BC's ability to use the play action bootleg game. The way they were able to kind of get the defensive end around the backside tackle really messed. That was at least 2 of Tommy's sacks. So that really messed up some plays. But watching the first half back, outside of a few key mistakes, BC was able to move the ball pretty well on the run still. Obviously, the one drive they fumble inside the 10-yard line. It's a mistake. It's pouring rain. And the way Trayshawn Ward gets tackled on that play, he basically gets kind of a helmet into the gut, and then he's kind of wrapped up, and another guy hits him. So, it's a fluke play, and, BC benefited from some fluke fumbles later in the game. So, and he came back and had a great game, both in terms of his vision, his ability to stay up after contact, break tackles, and get in the open field. And in the second half, BC starts running the ball pretty well, and then that starts opening stuff up. And with that, again, in the second half, you have a few plays where there's drops. Tommy makes a mistake here and there. So, I think it's just because there are so few passing plays in this game because of the weather. That means that, there's a smaller margin for error, and you remember the plays that don't work more than the ones that did. I think that if I did have to have a complaint, and I'm not. Some of these concerns are valid. Like, I think we do need to see Will Lawing be a better play caller in terms of the passing game. I think we do need to see him scheme some more receivers open. I think that the receivers need to do a better job of getting open. But I think it's not a fatal flaw of this team yet. And I think that in a game where the weather's more favorable and they can, be a little more open with the passing game, we'll see that ability to flourish.
Now, the second half of that game, we got to see Tommy throw the ball a little bit more, and the scheme seemed to change a little bit. And it looked like it was because the run game, other than some of that outside stuff, wasn't really working. What did you see in terms of the Michigan State run defense versus BC's offensive line?
I think some of this inside stuff was working too, and I think BC basically just kind of wore them down to the point that they were just starting to get a lean on them. Um, I think you saw some plays that were really well blocked, and Trayshawn Ward took advantage of them. Terrell Richard, to a bit of a lesser extent, but still had some nice plays. They did get some nice Tommy runs on QB draws and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I think they they just started kind of leaning on them. I don't think the run concept stats are available yet. Let me see if they are, because I think I do agree there was some more kind of the outside zone stuff, which is why maybe we didn't see Cairo show as much. Actually, a lot of duo, 31.6% man run, 13% pull lead, 10% counter, only 7.9% outside zone, 13% inside zone. So that I would say that tracks. You saw a lot of that with kind of the read option runs. A lot of the pull lead stuff that we talked about last year, where they would get the center and the guard or the center and the tackle out on the perimeter, and then the running back would follow. And some of those were beautifully blocked up. So got to give credit there. Um, just BC's, struggles in the red zone, which is something they've been excellent in up until this point. So you have obviously the fumble there. You have the 4th-and-goal situation, which we kind of disagree on the use of pistol in the in the goal line. But for me, it's Castellanos doesn't play under center. I don't think he has like ever at BC or even at UCF. So it's not something you want to, you know, I mean, unless you want to like really put it in the playbook, then but they're not going to pull it out of the blue, especially on a wet night where you could have a fumbled center snap exchange. That said, I still didn't love the 2 play calls there because it just felt so obvious that the defense knew that it was going to be a Castellanos run. On the 4th-and-goal, you did have a misexecution where Dwayne Alec basically pulled and ended up blocking Kai Robichaux more than a defensive lineman. So that's kind of a mistake of execution, not necessarily an execution, mistake of play calling. But I do think they need to be a little more creative there um, and it is tough in the rain because you can't really rely on your speed, the perimeter as much because you're worried that players are just going to slip. So that's part of it. You kind of just think, okay, if we
Would you
can,
have would you have gone more with Robichaux there, or
it's tough
if he was
because
healthy? I don't even know what's going on.
yeah, I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know if maybe he's not 100% healthy. He obviously isn't in a rhythm, hasn't any carries. If that's the case, then put Richard out there. So that's kind of just a weird situation where maybe it just got away from Lawing, I would say. But that was probably the one thing where I was like, I just didn't agree with the process here.
Okay. Any other players on offense that stood out to you in that game? Like, were you watching the tape and saw, wow, that guy had a big game?
I mean, obviously a huge game for Lewis Bond. And he had a few plays that he could have had even more yards. He had the drop kind of on a RPO swing screen. He had one where Tommy tried to hit him and it was just a little too high. But did a great job getting open, and kind of we saw the 2023 version of Lewis Bond where he was able to make plays after the catch. Again, the other receivers couldn't do much. Jaden Skeet making a really nice contested catch deep, kind of in the intermediate deep part of the field. Tight ends didn't really do much. Were decently solid as blockers. A bit of a weird game for the offensive line because I think they were obviously better than they were against Missouri. It's a tough game just because of Tommy's scrambling and kind of running around a bit. It's hard for them to hold their blocks and kind of find who to block because they don't really know where Tommy is because they don't have eyes in the back of their head. I think it's pretty clear that Jude Bowery is not 100% healthy after he left the Missouri game with an injury, and he played and he was okay. He wasn't great by any means. And
But
Logan Taylor, I think, played better.
Saw him hobbling off. He was hobbling off a lot. I noticed.
Yes, and Logan Taylor probably not still 100%, but played better. So that's something to monitor. But the problem is if Bowery can't go, you either have to switch multiple people's positions, or bump Taylor out and put Alec in at guard, or you play Kevin Klein at left tackle, which is an absolute non-starter for the offense. So, a 75% Jude Bowery is still better than 100% Kevin Klein for this offense.
All right. In a moment, I want to get Mitch's thoughts about the beast, the man, Cam Horsley, who we have not talked a lot about, but Mitch watched the film and he has a lot to talk about there. We'll get into all of that in just a moment. 5-Hour Energy fixes tired fast. Whether you have a long list of work to do or a list of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. If you are like me, you always have a large list of projects for your home, and when you're out of supplies for the project, do not also forget your 5-Hour Energy shot. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. You got to try them all. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 20th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I'm joined by Mitchell Wolf. Mitch, this defense, in the interior defense, we just saw the grades for Cam Horsley, and he had, 81, I believe it was?
Something like that. Let's see, 81 overall, 85.1 in run defense.
You know, he's one of your favorites, I can tell. Tell me about Cam Horsley and what you saw in this game.
Man, just another game of him just bench pressing the center consistently into the backfield. I was telling you before the show, the only play where they were really able to kind of get by him was where they basically chose not to block him and kind of let him just run up field, almost like a screen, but it was a run play, just to kind of let him run past the running back because he was so free, and then the running back went by him. But every other play, either commanding a double team and allowing other blockers or other defenders to get around and make the tackle, shedding blocks, making the tackle himself. There was one play where, and I couldn't believe this, that they had Horsley and Ezraco on the same side of the ball, and Michigan State still ran towards that side. And I was just like, well, come on, what are we doing? You guys can't be doing this. This is like, as a Steelers fan, this is like running towards Cam Hayward and TJ Watt on the same side of the ball. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, he was just dominant. I think it's an unsung performance because if you look at the stats, Michigan State had some decent rushing numbers, but a ton of that came from Aiden Childs scrambling, which is an issue. We can talk about it, but Michigan State had 28 designed rushes that only went for 81 yards, which is an average of 2.89 yards per carry. And their rushing success rate was 32.1%. And they averaged, I think, negative 0.38 yards before contact per rush. So basically, they averaged getting hit in the backfield or right at the line of scrimmage every play. And Cam Horsley was a huge part of that. But also, I think, and this was a huge compliment to the rest of the defense and how they adjusted against Missouri, everybody really played well against the run. I would say aside from missed tackling, which I think is a big part of it, is the rain, just wet jerseys, wet gloves, wet players, wet field. You saw everybody getting involved. You saw Nito Pollard, George Rook, Sedarius McConnell, Owen Stoudemire, Davian Crouch, Cam Arnold, even Owen McGowan had an excellent run stuff. You saw everybody playing the run super well. And, basically in the second half, Michigan State, aside from the one run on 3rd and 15, which busted play, bad play by the defense. But other than that, did a really great job at defending run, forcing Michigan State to be one-dimensional, pass the ball, and that led to a lot of the turnovers from Aiden Childs.
Speaking of Aiden Childs, he had some magic running the ball in this game, and obviously he made BC pay. What was BC doing wrong, or the difficulties they had? I think that at times it looked like they did have him like contained. And I thought it was more when they slowed down up front and kind of boxed him in, like Halfley used to always talk about. But when they went after him with their hair on fire going straight at him, that's when he just went right through him.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is Aiden Childs, being a high 4-star recruit, being a great athlete. Last year at Oregon State, when they brought him in to the game, a lot of it was to get a more mobile quarterback option than DJU. Somebody's more explosive an athlete. And you saw that, just making guys miss in the pocket with some crazy moves. And it was interesting because some of them, there was one play where I think they realized there were two plays where basically Michigan State was running a play action max protect scheme. So they had basically only 2 routes in the pattern. Everybody else was staying in the pass block. And for a lot of the defenders that are near the line of scrimmage, so they're usually your linebackers, some of your safeties, if your defender that you're assigned to cover in man stays in the block, it's called a green dog, and you basically have a green light to go blitz the quarterback. And one of those happened where they basically kept both tight ends and the running back in the block. All the linebackers go, and Aiden Childs is already kind of scrambling, so everybody's kind of rush lanes are off, and then he navigates it and is able to bust it for a 20-yard gain or something. And another one similarly happened where he was able to kind of step around it. I guess that was the one where Cam Arnold kind of had him because Cam Arnold was covering the running back out of the backfield and he had him near the sideline. And then Childs jukes back. So, one of them I would say is definitely kind of just a fluke play. The other one was, and all of them involve Childs just being a very good athlete. And, in the rain, he knows where he wants to go and the defense doesn't. And, you can try to pursue it. And sometimes it's just not going to work out in your favor, especially when a guy like that is that athletic.
I want to talk about the linebackers for a second quickly, because I have thought we put a lot of stock into Bam Crouch going into the season, and it seems like he's living up to that. And I don't think we've talked a lot about Bam. Let's talk about Bam here.
Yeah, he had a missed tackle or two, but he also had some really great plays. He had the pass breakup. Forget exactly when, but it was to a short route to the tight end. I think might have actually been on third down. So he broke that up with a great play in zone. He had another TFL where he just knifed through the line on a blitz. And generally just is just raising the athletic quotient of this linebacker room, and also is a very instinctual player. That was the thing that BC was missing so much, was you had a player like Vinny DePalma who was instinctual and smart and everything and strong and willing to take on blocks, but just didn't have the athletic ability and speed to get there sometimes. And their linebackers just not experienced enough, or instinctual enough or big enough to take on blocks. So they also struggle. Whereas Crouch is a very good blend of that. And, there are sometimes where he makes mistakes and, this is his fourth start after playing almost exclusively on special teams for the last few years. So there's going to be a few hiccups here and there, but I think he's, really answered the bell here, playing a lot of snaps. And even Owen McGowan had a very good game. BC finally deployed their base defense, which was a 3-4. I was right back in the spring. I was like, if they're going to do it, they're going to. And I did say if they're going to do it, they're going to do it this game, because they basically run nothing but nickel except for short yardage and prevent. So they broke it out. You saw a lot of Quan Williams. I saw a lot of Odin Stroudmeyer and Sen McConnell out there at the same time. So, and that was very good in their ability. That was very helpful in their ability to stop the run, because they could use those bigger bodies to clog up the running lanes and not have to commit extra resources from the safeties and lot to come up into the box and help stop the run. So those guys are really good. I just was going to pivot to the secondary because we don't have that much time, but I think this was a pretty volatile game for them because they have a few big coverage busts. You have the one where Ryan Turner just doesn't go with the deep route and Giles hits Montori Foster for a big gain down the sideline. Not sure what he did there. It's just a mistake. They had another play where I think it was Tucker and maybe Cam Martinez there was a stacked alignment of receivers. There were two of them, one in front of the other, and one ran outside, one ran on a deep fade. And they both went with the slant. And they were kind of communicating before the snap, and obviously miscommunication. The guy was wide open, but Giles overthrew him. You had one play where Carter Davis was trying to cover a deep kind of post over route and ran in a circle basically and then tripped himself. And the guy was wide open and Giles missed him again. So you have these kind of volatile plays. And obviously you have some great plays where Max Tucker almost has an interception. You have the one where Carter Davis almost kills Amari Jackson. But then you have Amari Jackson, Carter Davis, and Max Tucker all getting interceptions, especially Max Tucker's in a huge moment. So, there's some great plays and there's some bad plays. And, sometimes, and there were some plays where they just, not necessarily a bust, but there was one play where Amari Jackson kind of just overran a route and the receiver cut it back and was open. And, it was a decent gain. So I think that Tim Lewis is concerned about this secondary's volatility. And that's why he's not blitzing as much, because BC is having some struggles getting pressure on the quarterback as much as they need to. And even though they are blitzing a decent bit, the pressure is not getting home as much. And I think that he's not being as aggressive as he wants to because he is kind of a little wary of how these guys are performing when they're left on in one-on-one situations.
All right. In our last segment, I'm going to talk with Mitch about any last thoughts about the game. I want to ask him about his thoughts on fans storming the field, and we'll get into a whole bunch more in just a moment. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where your places when you place your bets. I want to go, and I have told you I'm going to start leaning in on unders for the Patriots scoring, whatever their team total is. And I know they're playing the 49ers this week, going under on all of that. So you can also get yourself started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Back to here at Locked On Boston College, wrapping things up here with Mitchell Wolf of Eagle Insider. All right, Mitch, any last thoughts about anything? Punting, kicking, any thoughts about things going on in the game that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, we got to talk about that. My guy, Luke McLaughlin, is now the holder, it seems.
Yep.
So that was news to me when I rewatched the game. I was like, oh, okay, so that's happening. Yeah, I mean, kicking, not great. Oh, actually, I will say this. Michigan State's last field goal, very questionable in my mind. I would have liked to see a review on that. That did not look as good to me as I thought. I thought the ref should maybe take a look at that. It looked like it went outside. Of course, he nails the 55-yard or 51-yard or whatever because BC just has
they have to run in. They have to run into guys that can kick these all
exactly.
the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Punting, yeah. I mean, aside from I think Liam Connor had a good punt. That was the one that got downed in the one. It was only a 33-yard punt. So, but still, good play. Good job by I would say good job by Savenko not completely muffing that punt that kind of got up on him and almost went over his head, but he got it and kind of got out of the way and then made a decent punt out of it as much as he could. But yeah, I mean, this is a major liability for this team. When they start getting in the ACC play against teams that are just as talented or more talented they are, that this is probably going to be an issue that comes back to bite them. I think that Bill O'Brien probably wants to incorporate something where they can get rid of punting. But maybe in this game that just wasn't possible because of the rain, the inability to have the full offense available.
And many of those punts were like they were so deep in their own zone.
Yeah,
there's no way they could have not punted there. They had
exactly. Yeah. So and they went for it on fourth. I feel like they went twice, but it might have only been once, and they did get it on I think that was a quick pass to Ward. Rest of the team, trying to think. I'll talk about the fans rushing the field. It's kind of jumped the shark at this point. Everybody's like, oh, let the college kids have fun. I do agree with that. But at this point, we're kind of just like, you can't stop it. And it's just going to happen. I mean, I think with the red bandana game and also just having a close game like this that came down to the wire, that kind of excuses it a little bit. So I'm not going to get all up in arms about it. I rushed the field because I never got to do it while I was at BC because I was in the band. So that was fun. But I think when I think about this team in general moving forward, I think that Bill O'Brien, Tim Lewis, and maybe a little to a lesser extent Will Lawing, I think the coaching staff is doing an excellent job of papering over some of the talent deficiencies on this team. And maybe not talent deficiencies, but or at every position, but maybe just like some inexperience in the secondary. Taking a major step back at guard from last year to this year, going from Mahogany and Hergel to Jack Conley / Dwayne Alec and a not healthy Logan Taylor. I think that they are preparing this team exceptionally well and having them very focused and disciplined. We saw penalties were again not an issue in this game. I don't think Michigan State had that many either. I will say refs were holding in a lot of flags, and we're watching the tape. And I'm sure if I looked for it at BC, I'm sure this would be the case for them too. But I felt like there were a lot of holding, blocking the backs that could have been called to Michigan State's offense. But obviously not going to be super sour about it. But I think that the coaching of this team elevates them beyond necessarily what the talent is. And I think that will help them win games against teams with similar talent and maybe lesser coaching. But I think that this is a average to above average team in terms that is elevated by coaching. And, there may be games where we see kind of if luck doesn't go in their favor where they can't force 4 turnovers, which to their credit, a lot of those turnovers were because of the pressure. When BC did get pressure in this game, they were able to capitalize on it. I think Aiden Childs when he was pressured, he was 1 of 7 for -3 yards and he threw 2 of his interceptions. So, able to capitalize, and that's great. But, if things aren't going their way, I'm just not sure they have all they need to kind of dig out of that hole. And even though they were able to come back in this game and it was a close game, but I think there's just some things missing from this team that is going to prevent them from, being a true, this is a lock, stock, and barrel top 25 team. I think they're in the tier of teams that are from about 15 to 40 that are all kind of in that same tier. And it's all kind of based on who your schedule is and how you perform against who, when. But I think that with having a player like Thomas Castellanos, who has matured a ton in terms of his and he took some bad sacks, absolutely, but not being super risky with the ball, doing better job of taking what the defense can give him and just being a leader for this team that can rally around him and believe that he, and with the help of the coaching staff, can put them in a position to win most of, if not any game.
All right. You got it, folks. This is going to put putting a bow on this Michigan State game. On Friday, Mitch will be back here. We'll talk more. We're going to get into Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers. And I know Mitch has some thoughts about that. We'll talk a lot about that.
It's my favorite mascot in college football, Big Red.
My kids, I cannot wait to show them this thing because they're going to ask me, what is it? I'm going to go, a monster.
Nobody knows, and that's the beauty of it.
So it's going to be a fun one. It's a noon start. We also found out the UVA game 2 weeks is also going to be a noon start. And then it's a Virginia Tech the week after. That's a Friday, I think. Thursday?
I think
Thursday.
I get that in the Louisville game confused all the time. Which one is first? Which game is on which day of the week? So
because I screwed up last night and said that the Louisville game, if they were ever going to do a game day, they could do that, but I believe it's a weekday game, so it can't be that. So never mind. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the reader who picked that out. I screwed up. So thank you all for listening to today's show. Where can people find your work, Mitch?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. We'll have the game rewatch pieces out probably on Tuesday and Wednesday. Defense is almost there. Just finished cutting up the clips and then going to get in the offense. And luckily there aren't a ton of offensive plays, so it should be pretty easy to get through. But then we'll be on to Western Kentucky, who is, like AJ said, a very interesting team. They've had a very interesting season and should present a unique challenge for BC in terms of game planning on both sides of the ball.
And follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. I'll be back again solo tomorrow talking more BC sports. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all again soon for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.